Democracy That Delivers is brought to you by the Center for International Private Enterprise. Now to your host.
Welcome to the Democracy That Delivers podcast and our series, Association Frontiers, featuring the issues, innovations, and leaders at the forefront of the chamber and association industry from around the world. I'm Stephen Rosenlund, a certified association executive and chair of CIPE's Chambers and Associations Working Group. For 40 years, CIPE has partnered with chambers and associations to find solutions to some of the world's most pressing socioeconomic challenges. We're proud to bring you their stories and experts from the industry globally. Today, we mark roughly 1 year since the tragic earthquakes which devastated southern Turkey and northern Syria in February of 2023, causing mass casualties, population displacements, and widespread property damage. The Turkish Enterprise and Business Confederation, known by its acronym TÜRKONFED, has been at the forefront of the business community's response and role in humanitarian relief, recovery, and reconstruction. TÜRKONFED is an independent business confederation representing 31 federations and 354 associations with more than 80,000 company members across Turkey. Today, I'm joined by Erhan Arslan, Deputy Secretary General for Project Management and Coordination at TÜRKONFED, and Babak Yektafar, CIPE's resident Turkey expert and Director of Turkey Programs. Erhan, Babak, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Erhan, we had a discussion about 1 year ago on this podcast with your colleague, Arda Batu, who is the Secretary General of TÜRKONFED, about the situation and relief efforts that TÜRKONFED was taking at the time. And our hearts continue to go out to the people of Turkey. This was the deadliest natural disaster in the country's history, one of the worst in globally in recorded history, with more than 50,000 people having lost their lives, millions affected in other ways, 1.5 million people homeless. Just really unprecedented in scale, almost unimaginable. How are the people of southern Turkey doing 1 year later?
So it's been a year. It's been a heck of a year for that region and for all of the Turkey. And when the earthquake happened on February 6th, we had a hard time grasping the reality and the magnitude of that disaster. And immediately after the earthquake, we had a crisis desk with all of our team members pitching in the office, halting all of our other activities and trying to help the region. And in the first 48 hours, we had the first impact assessment that came out. Probably Arda mentioned this a year ago. And then in the first 4 days, we had the first plan to tackle the issues which were unraveling at the time, and we had a 3-level plan. First was the humanitarian aid. So it was a very big crisis, level 4 on the global scale. So the government of Turkey asked for international assistance, and we had to accommodate the international assistance deploying within the region and coordinating the local, national, and international efforts within the region. And our own efforts in the region came to 251 lorries of goods and services going to the region and gathering together $11 million of support in the first week or so. And the second step was the shelter, because people lost their lives and the buildings collapsed and the industrial zones have collapsed. There were no place to work and operate businesses, and people had nowhere to go to work from. So we had to assist the region for sheltering, which we did. And the third one, which we are coming to after 1 year of various experiences on different levels, good and bad, we came to the economic recovery, which we think is going to last until 2026.
Amazing. I mean, just incredible the way that the association and the confederation and all of your members are able to respond to this, and the support that you're able to mobilize for the affected communities. Babak, you know the area well. What are some of the key sectors of the economy in this part of Turkey, and can you explain the economic importance of this region to the country and to the region more broadly?
Well, actually, I think Erhan can do a better job of that since they're directly involved with that. And Erhan, please, feel free to add to anything that I have to say. I mean, first of all, as you know, the majority of businesses in Turkey, as is the case with the region, this particular region is really one of the heart of Anatolia, which is the majority of the country, the Turkey, which is on the Asian side. And great many businesses, the essence, the foundational businesses really have started from that part of the region. As you know, the majority of businesses in Turkey are essentially family-owned businesses, very much active in the supply chain, and anything from machinery to textile. And so I think altogether, when you think of the size and the scope of the damage that took place last year, it has been extremely disruptive. But I like to hear from Erhan with regards to their own personal experience of, what kind of disruptions have they seen and have experienced.
Yes, thank you for passing the buck on this, and I think depending on the denominator, the region which I mentioned region, it means 11 cities that are impacted by the earthquake. So this region of earthquake victim zone is about, it makes up 10 to 15% of the economy, depending on the denominator. And you are very much correct in pointing out the sectors like textile, tourism, manufacturing, and agriculture. And first thing that we saw was the break in the supply chain. It's broken because larger enterprises, situated in the bigger industrial zones, they have more capabilities and more resources, which led them in an advantageous position because they had stronger buildings, stronger machinery infrastructure. So they survived it, because we have the data from all the industrial zones within the region. 90% of them survived with no damages. But on the other side of the spectrum, smaller and medium-sized enterprises, again, based on the data, 80% of them were destroyed. So larger enterprises, since they procure their goods and services from medium and small ones, and the medium and small ones were destroyed, the supply chain was broken. Another one was that there were many casualties, as you said, 50,000 people, which is very, very large, largest in the history of the country, which led to a loss in the workforce. So that's also something still to be remedied, which is very hard, I understand. I can mention these two, loss of lives resulting in the disruption in the workforce and disruption in the supply chain management.
If I may, Steve, as you know, TÜRKONFED is a confederation of many business associations and chambers, and particularly, they have a reach throughout the country, and of course, a great reach into the region that we're talking about. But I'm curious, Erhan, if you could expand on the role of the local associations and chambers, or your members essentially, and to what extent were they active in terms of providing you with the kind of information that TÜRKONFED needed to be able to do what they were going to do? To what extent, they provided the support that you all needed. So in terms of information, in terms of support, in terms of needs, and so on and so forth, I'm very curious to hear about the role that these local members played in this effort.
That's a great question. Just to clarify my point, I will give you one background information, which is that the immediate support right after the earthquake, uh, which is for saving lives, falls under the jurisdiction of public stakeholders. So whoever wants to get involved in that has to be licensed individual, not as an institution, but as an individual to support the public stakeholders. So our members, first of all, individually did that. And for as associations, they helped us gather data from the local authorities, from the local businesses, and we conveyed that data to public stakeholders, which helped helped build their policies after the earthquake. And in 2020, we developed a model for business associations for involving in the disaster resilience efforts. We provided them with three levels from basic to extensive to advanced. And based on their decision on how much they want to be involved in, they can choose a model and get involved in the disaster resilience from communication to coordination to having extensive complex data collection and report creation. So some of the institutions, our members as associations, were at the forefront. Some of them did just maybe coordination, and some of them helped gather data.
I was really curious about this as well because and we're going to talk a little bit about a new report issued by TÜRKONFED, which CIPE has supported. I have my copy right here. Supply chain resilience after the earthquakes, and it's really an impressive piece of work. Um, and it focuses on primarily two dimensions of resilience: the technical, which is dealing with supply chains, and economic in terms of recovery. But there are two other dimensions as well: organizational and social. And we're touching on the organizational aspect of resilience, which I'm particularly interested in as a someone who specializes in chamber and association management. I'm I'm curious about the model that you developed in 2020. Was that in seems very timely, that you had developed this prior to the earthquake? That was obviously during the pandemic era. What sorts of um, lessons maybe did you take from the pandemic experience and the disruptions of supply chains during the pandemic that were useful or helpful in the earthquake disaster response?
Yes. So the fact of the matter is Turkey is a very disaster prone country. It could be a globally sourced, it could be Turkey's natural resourced disasters, or it could be human made like pandemics or anything else. As a business confederation, it's one of our core topics to be investing in the disaster resilience, and it's a global basic data that a dollar invested in business risk reduction saves $4 after the earthquake crisis management. So it's plain and simple. We have to be very conscious about how we operate, how we conduct our business, and how we prepare our supply chain. And as an institution, we are a member of Connecting Business Initiative, which was founded by UNDP and OCHA, based in Geneva since 2018. So this is why we moved on to this supply chain management, disaster resilience as a core principle of our institution.
That's really a number though. A dollar in disaster risk reduction results in $4 saved, a 4x sort of ROI in a sense of the preparedness, the investment in preparedness. Really amazing. Um, what are some of the key takeaways that you think readers should get from this report? I'll ask that of both of you. I read it as a more of a consumer. of the report, and I've got many things highlighted and tabbed in it, and lots of things I'd like to talk about. What are some of the key takeaways that you would suggest to our readers, our listeners?
So there are a couple of key takeaways I would try to highlight within this report. Obviously, I would invite you to read all of it. It's fully English, published for the public. One is that the shelter issue has been ongoing. The public stakeholders has been trying to remedy that. It's a big problem because people lost their lives because the buildings have collapsed, but there are also damaged buildings that have not been collapsed, and the tenants or owners of those houses, they now live in temporary shelters, and this issue is very big and it's going to take some more time to resolve. We have been anticipating this problem to last around 2 years because it's also a global standard to live in containers and temporary shelters. We had plans for 24 months in the temporary shelters that we have built in the region. And we offered a plan to public stakeholders on what to do with these shelters after these people move to their housing. And one solution is that these could be recycled. Another one is that they could be there, they could stay there until more housing has been made ready for the people whose houses are minor damaged not so high. Another takeaway is that the businesses within that region has been struggling to access finance, which is a common phenomenon throughout the Turkey. And since this is a year of election in Turkey, as was the last year for central government, now is for local municipalities, we will have 4 to 5 years without election, which Turkey can use for structural reforms. Access to finance is one of those areas that we recommend for those reforms. Another one could be the strengthening measures to take for coordination after disasters, which is very key. And we have also some recommendations for businesses, which businesses can solve themselves for structural problems and risks, as well as non-structural, like stabilizing your TV, stabilizing your machinery, very basic stuff.
Steve, as you know, I mean, this is one of the key takeaways for me. In all honesty, it's more of a big picture kind of a thing. And as you know, Steve, associations, business associations, particularly when we talk about it within the context of where we are in the United States, maybe it's not necessarily the case outside, but they're known for putting up membership services, galas, newsletters, and things of that nature. And when I'm reading this, and what I've actually witnessed over the years, is that the role that business associations can play in such an important area in saving and restoring hope, in saving lives, restoring hope, in trying to reconstruct, in trying to revive. And that is quite a job and quite an achievement, I should say, to TÜRKONFED. And the fact that they were able to mobilize so early and so in such an agile manner to respond to this tragedy really is breathtaking. I don't mean to be hyperbole, but I mean this was quite an achievement. So this was a great takeaway for me, in that the kind of role that business associations can play, and how impactful they can be. But the other thing that actually kind of attracted my attention as well, and Erhan, you just mentioned it a little bit. Given the nature of how things are in different countries, the structures, the governance, and things of that nature, To what extent, Erhan, and I'm going to ask you this question, will these recommendations resonate in a way that can develop a better public-private cooperation when it comes to these types of issues and disasters and resiliency issues? You talked about access to finance. Obviously, the public sector also has to be involved with that. The communications and building shelters and infrastructure and things of that nature. So I like to hear I don't think you guys it was an overt recommendation for this expanded public-private cooperation, but I'm wondering if this is something you guys are looking into or hoping to expand and continue. What are your thoughts on that?
It's a complex question which has answers from multiple perspectives. And first and foremost, as an institution, we believe in the local development and fostering development through local mechanisms. And through the support of CIPE, we had local development model in 2020, which involved working together on the local level through universities, through local municipalities, and through the offices of the central government on the local level, which involves chambers, associations, working together. Because everyone has a different agenda on their plates, and they can resolve most of the issues on the local level where central government may not be aware of the local perceptions. And I think we are trying to further these efforts on the national level. Obviously, we are still working on legislation change. We are somewhat successful at it, and legislation change takes time, and reflecting those in the policy change obviously take time because of the bureaucracy and elections and so on. But there is definitely room for improvement, and we are trying to do the best we can with our members on the local and national level.
I'm really struck as well, Babak, by the things that you highlighted. It's these are not a lot of this is not normal activity. It's not business as usual for a business association, right? Think about the day before the earthquake, and what a day at TÜRKONFED would have looked like with kind of the usual activities and services, and maybe there were expos being planned and this and that, and a lot of that continues, of course. But then something like this happens, a shock like this happens, and you need to pivot entirely. And you look at the body of work over the last year; it's really quite amazing. And operating at these three levels between the humanitarian, the relief, and now longer term recovery, which is a process you're a part of and have set in motion for the next couple of years. So it's the agility that requires is really substantial, and I think our partners around the world can certainly take something away from this. One of the other things that stood out to me is the report sort of sets up a tension between the practical responses and shifts that companies made to this economic shock and market disruptions at a firm level, and the report talks about sort of mimicking competitors and price matching and so forth, which can be a kind of a race to the bottom, versus the higher calling that TÜRKONFED sets out for innovation, right? And to create, you use the crisis like this to create new forms of value and demand. Erhan, can you talk a little bit about that and the potential maybe that you see for innovation that could be catalyzed by crisis?
Right. The strive for innovation is at the key themes for 2024, both for our national agenda and for our agenda within the earthquake-affected region. So we have some priority areas because we have a lot of plans, but we have to prioritize, within our limits of resource mobility. And one of those areas would be to help women entrepreneurs in the region. We have training programs for women entrepreneurs on the national level, but we will have special episodes for women entrepreneurs within that region. Another one is to adapt the digital developments and new digital tools for the conventional sectors. The adaptation of AR, AI to conventional sectors like architecture, and design. We are going to help businesses, adapt those new tools. And the third one I can mention is to focus on e-commerce, and because there's a great potential in Turkey on e-commerce and it's a growing sector, we are urging businesses to move to e-commerce where we have advantageous packages for TÜRKONFED members with our deals with e-commerce giants operating in Turkey. So I can mention these three for now.
Let's talk a little bit about rebuilding and the reconstruction that's needed. This is a process that's well underway, but there's still a long road ahead. What are the remaining needs for reconstruction? And when you look at your membership, how many of your members do we look? The numbers in your report were staggering in terms of the impact on businesses. What percentage have recovered at this point or have resumed operations? If that data even exists, what's needed to get businesses back up on their feet, and really get into a recovery mode.
So the data on the public stakeholders which are out there and the data we have overlaps around 85 to 90%, depending on the city, and it changes from sector to sector. And it's going to take time, and that doesn't stop us from advocating for more reforms, which could be on supply chain security and green transformation, because we see more and more in Turkey's satellite in terms of trade, like the EU. Within EU, we have France, Germany, or on the Pacific and Asia, we have Japan, who has new trade laws and supply chain laws in practice, which are monitoring the practices of businesses and their procurement policies, and holding them responsible within their supply chain too. So let's say if I'm a company A procuring goods and services from company B, and I am also responsible from company B's practices too, according to these laws. And we are trying to raise awareness on these new regulations for exporting companies, to adapt their practices to stay competitive, basically.
Those are great insights, Babak. I would like to ask you as well. You're a certified compliance and ethics professional. So, from your seat, what are some of the things that we should be looking at in terms of rebuilding uh, rebuilding from a disaster in the right way, ethically in compliance, not just in Turkey necessarily, but what are some of the more global lessons that we can take from this?
Those actually what Erhan mentioned, and connected to your question. I think these are great points that I was just thinking about, because earlier I mentioned how taken I was by the role that a business association can play in such an effort, post tragic event and recovery and so on, where we don't often think of business associations of doing that type of work. And here is another. Obviously, this has been I've used the word tragedy so many times, but it really has been one. But as is the case, often is the case, there's a day after, and there are the days after, and once you kind of come back up into the surface, then there's an opportunity. There's an opportunity to rebuild and reconstruct, but do it in a way that is more adaptable to today's world. Sometimes family businesses around the world, they have a tendency of kind of, and there's a lot of risk issues involved, and I do understand that, but they tend to kind of lag behind more innovative companies. They kind of take their time. We've been doing this for so many years in such a way, and everything is fine, kind of a thing. But now here's the opportunity for a lot of these businesses to be able to rebuild in a way that can make them truly competitive in the global supply chain. We talked about digitization. That is key. We talked about addressing the needs of women entrepreneurs, which in most countries in our region in particular are considered marginalized and underserved. We talked about, green economy. We've talked about the compliance issues. And that's the part that Erhan mentioned that is absolutely accurate. We work with another organization in Turkey, with Ethics and Reputation Society in Turkey, which specializes in promoting compliance among companies. And it used to be just anti-corruption compliance, to be honest with you, as one of the key significant issues. It has gone way beyond that. We're talking about the digital rights, for example, and how that plays a role in terms of compliance. We've talked about environmental issues and social issues and things of that nature. And again, for Turkish companies, particularly these family-owned businesses in this region, to be competitive, they need to understand that they have to comply with these rules to be truly competitive, and they can be. They have everything else to them. They have everything else that can make them really stand out and be competitive. But these are the issues that they really need to pay attention to, and I'm really glad that TÜRKONFED is taking the lead in trying to get that message across, and I think that they'll do a great job. But again, an opportunity now that we're past this tragic period, an opportunity for these businesses to really rebuild and be competitive in today's global economy.
Well, thank you both very much. I really like the way that the conversation has evolved from the one we had a year ago in the aftermath of the earthquake, and now how we're talking about these issues: building resilience and recovery, innovation, investing in innovation, and I'm just so impressed by the work that the TÜRKONFED and your partners have been able to achieve. It also strikes me, just to reiterate, what a valuable tool this new report can be, not just in Turkey, but for business membership organizations globally who are preparing for the next disaster. And, we say it's not a matter of if, but when organizations in any part of the world are going to be dealing with a disaster, whether it's the next pandemic or a natural disaster or some other shock to the system. And so this provides really powerful lessons learned from your experience in Turkey. And as it's defined in the report, resilience is about preparedness. And to quote, supply chain resilience can only be strengthened by businesses preparing for the next disaster. So with that, I invite our listeners to check out the report from TÜRKONFED. CIPE will be sharing this as well. And we look forward to following your progress, Erhan, and the continued recovery in the region and the work that you're doing to support your members. Thank you for everything. Thank you for your time today. Erhan, Babak, have enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you, Steve.
It's been a joy. Thank you, Stephen.
Listen and subscribe to CIPE's Democracy That Delivers wherever you get your podcasts.